Hi, I'm John from Just Music. If you like today's show, give it a thumbs up, like and subscribe, and leave a comment. And check out my other channel, Just Whiskey, without the E, where I review a different Scotch related product once a week. But today, we are going to be talking about my favorite drummers of all time. And the list is going to be a lot shorter than the guitar player list. I've been playing drums since I was 10 years old, and I first started taking drum lessons from a gentleman named Roy Jordan. And he was the drummer for a local band called the Spellbinders. And they pretty much played cover tunes, but for years, they were the staple band. They're just great. They played all the time, and they even let me play a couple times. And at my first wedding, the Spellbinders, I hired the Spellbinders to play my wedding, and then they let my band at the time, called Blind Drive, with Rich Dion on bass and Jim Chandler on guitar, myself on drums, and I think we had Randy on vocals, I believe. And we played 4 or 5 songs at my wedding. This was 1986. Yeah. So that's how I started, and I still jam with guys, and I still stay active in the drumming world, although I've never made it rich and famous from that at all. Before I get into that, I have to make a note that legendary guitarist Rick Derringer passed away yesterday on May 26th. He was 77 years old, and Rick Derringer was the very first concert I ever saw, and he opened up for Peter Frampton. And I still have the ticket stub right here from the Providence Civic Center. And Rick Derringer opened up for Peter Frampton August 26, 1977 at the Providence Civic Center. And they were great. They were really, really rocking. I remember when Rick, the other guitar player, and the bass player, when they were jamming on stage, they tossed, as they're playing, they're tossing their instruments to each other faster and faster and faster. I don't know how the hell they did it, because back then all these guitars had chords on them, but they did it, and it was pretty cool. So Rick Derringer, his big hit was Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo, but he played a lot with Johnny Winter and Edgar Winter. But he first started out with the band called the McCoys, and their big hit was Hang On Sloopy. Yep, and that was Rick Derringer on guitar. So he died in Florida, 77 years old, yesterday. Cause of death is unknown to me. So, but my very first concert I saw was Rick Derringer. All right, drummers. I'm going to start off with a couple that no one's heard of, probably. If you're from my area, back in the late 90s, 1996, 1997, there was a band called The Slip. 3 guys, so 2 brothers, a drummer and guitar player were brothers, and then their bass player from Providence was a friend. And they were an original band, and they put out a few CDs, and their very first CD, which I have, I just can't find it, is called From the Get-Go. So like a play on words. From the get-go. Great album, really good. And that drummer, Andrew Barr, I don't think the Slip are really that active anymore, but the drummer, Andrew Barr, I met him a couple times, seen him playing at clubs back in the 90s. And besides Buddy Rich, Andrew Barr was probably the best percussionist I've ever seen or met and talked to. this guy was just amazing. I mean, besides a drum set, I mean, he had all sorts of percussive instruments that he was play the whole set, and bongos and everything you could think of. Amazing drummer. Again, besides Buddy Rich, probably the best drummer I've ever witnessed. Um, we're going to get to Buddy Rich in a minute. Also, to a local band, Martha's Vineyard, Cape Cod, Fall River area is a band called N Train. They've been playing for decades and decades and decades. I don't know the drummer's name, but N Train is a percussionist's dream. Their rhythm section and percussion section, pretty much everybody at some point in that band picks up a percussive instrument, and they just build and build and build. If you've never seen N Train, really, I highly recommend it. Their percussion is very Bo Diddley-ish, but boy, are they super tight and rhythmic. Really, really good. All right, Neil Peart from Rush, awesome drummer, but I'm going to focus on more who influenced me when I was younger. But Neil Peart, I hold in high regard. I mean, he was an innovator, incredible drummer for the band Rush. I've seen Rush a few times way back in the day, 70s and 80s, and Neil Peart's drum solos were epic. A very technical, tight drummer, really, really good. Prairie Prince, he's currently touring with Todd Rundgren. He's 75 years old. Prairie Prince, most of his career was the drummer for the Tubes. That was really the most of his time was with the Tubes. But he started off with the band Journey in San Francisco, and then the Tubes. So Journey started in like 1970, maybe even 69. Right, basically. Neil Schon and Prairie Prince, Neil Schon left from Santana, and then Journey was formed, so early 70s, and then he joined the Tubes. And I've seen the Tubes many times, probably 8, 9, 10 times. And Prairie Prince is a phenomenal drummer. I've seen several hundred concerts in my life, and probably several hundred drum solos, and I've never really, to be honest with you, most drum solos they're okay, but not many have really knocked me out. But Prairie Prince, his drum solos are incredible. I'm just gravitated towards it when I see it. And I have to give honorable mention to Ginger Baker from Cream. Good drummer, but I never really connected with Cream or Ginger Baker that much. But I'll throw him in there. People that influence me now: Mitch Mitchell, the drummer for Jimi Hendrix Experience. I don't think Jimmy could have really done what he was doing without somebody like Mitch Mitchell. Mitch could play anything, and it wouldn't throw Jimmy off, and the same thing. Jimmy could just go off in his tangent, and Mitch could follow him, even if it went out of time, if they slowed down and sped up. And anybody that's ever played with me as a drummer knows that I'm probably the most like that, or used to be like that, where I would speed up and slow down, sometimes intentionally over accelerate a song, just because it was fun and because I could. Ringo Starr, my favorite band of all time. I think it's the greatest band of all time, the Beatles. Ringo Starr, as a drummer, he's incredible. He really is. The Beatles made it look easy, and Ringo made it look easy. But as a comparison, I'm not going to put Charlie Watts on the list from the Rolling Stones. I can play on drums just about any Rolling Stone song effortlessly. I can just do it. Not so with the Beatles. Ringo is a very challenging drummer to replicate. He really is. And out of all the bands I've been in, most of them can't really do justice to Beatles songs. Um, so, yeah, Ringo Starr. John Bonham from Led Zeppelin, the best, the best foot of any drummer. Period. He and John Paul Jones from Led Zeppelin fell in love with John. I think he's even quoted as saying he was in love with John Bonham's foot. His he with one pedal he could make a regular bass sound like a double or even a triple bass. The notes that he could play with that bass drum was incredible, and normally a drummer is in sync with a bass player, but not with Led Zeppelin. John Bonham was in sync with Jimmy Page and vice versa. Jimmy Page just focused on what John was doing, and John just focused on what Jimmy was doing. And that's how I am, generally speaking. I usually focus in with the guitar player and or the vocalist. Um, Very seldom do I try to tie in with the bass player, although that's my job and that's probably what I should have been doing. But then Keith Moon from The Who, the the wildest, craziest drummer probably that ever lived. And I was heavily influenced by his drumming, and just being wild and crazy. Um, nobody nobody can play like him. And so now we're going to get to the best drummer, but the runner-up would be Gene Krupa. But Buddy Rich. Buddy Rich started off playing with the Tommy Dorsey band, and then did his own thing after that. And when he was with Tommy Dorsey, him and Frank Sinatra. Sinatra was a singer, of course, but they butted heads a lot, and it didn't work out. um, I had the honor of seeing Buddy Rich, and I have his autograph right here. I'm going to explain it. But so back to Gene Krupa really quick. You can YouTube the drum battle with Gene Krupa and Buddy Rich. You decide for yourself who's the best drummer. And they even made at least one album together, Gene Krupa and Buddy Rich, the drum battle, or the drum wars, at least one album. Buddy Rich is the far superior drummer. Um, Gene Krupa, in my opinion, was, even though rock and roll hadn't been invented because he started in the late 30s and 40s. Looking back, he was more of a rock drummer, and I think even John Bonham was studied Gene Krupa, so that makes a lot of sense to me. And even Peter Criss from Kiss was heavily influenced by Gene Krupa, and was able to meet him later on in life. And yeah, but Buddy Rich, greatest drummer of all time. I saw him back at the Attleboro High School. This is the little flyer they handed out, and it says 1981 to 1982. So I don't have the ticket stub. I don't even think there were ticket stubs for this, but around 1981, I believe. And after the show, I went on his tour bus, me and a couple other friends, and this was back in 1981. Whenever he finished the show, he would go on the tour bus by himself and smoke weed. So he comes out in the driver's seat of the bus, and I was first in line for the autograph. And he had something, I don't even know if Sharpies were even invented back then, but he had kind of like a Sharpie. And it was a pen. And I handed him my program, and he signed it, but it ran out of ink, even as he first started, and he just quickly handed it to me. And I says, "Oh, excuse me." I said, you ran out of ink. Would you mind signing it again?" And he ripped it out of my hands, and got a new pen, and he wrote, Buddy Rich right on there. And you can see, if you look at the faded version behind there. And going full circle back to where I started taking drum lessons at age 10, Ray Jordan, he met Buddy Rich back in the, I don't know, 60s or 70s, a long time ago. And Buddy Rich was his favorite drummer of all time. And he got to meet Buddy Rich backstage. His band was playing in the same theater as Buddy Rich's, or something to that effect. And Ray Jordan was backstage behind the curtains, and he met Buddy Rich, and he shook his hand, and he said, you are my inspiration. You are, the greatest drummer that ever lived. And Buddy Rich, I think, pretty much said, don't bother me, kid. Or he was a total asshole to him, and just totally brushed him off. But that's who he was. Buddy Rich was a very ornery, abrasive person, and he had an ego, a huge ego. He was the best. So there it is. That's my list. I hope you enjoyed today's show. And a quick moment of silence to Rick Derringer. 77. It looks like he had a pretty damn good life. But thank you for watching. Thumbs up, like, subscribe, and comments below who your favorite drummer is. All right. Take care. Rock on.